The Athene Real Talk Podcast explores controversial ideas to stimulate debate and active thinking. These ideas do not always reflect Athene's personal views. Welcome to the Athene Real Talk Podcast.
He has been called the best gamer in the world, hands down.
World-famous gamer and philanthropist Athene.
Gaming for Good, it's called, has raised more than $20 million.
Using his notoriety to raise money for charity.
On activism, science, culture, and self-development.
Proud to have him in the studio today. I would not want to take you on in a video game.
I don't prepare every day the real talk topics, but I've been, more and more started to really think about how we can turn this entire experience into more structured format, because I talk about so many different things. And as a result, the real talk is very scattered. So people just go to the podcast, they listen to all the podcasts. But let's say you have a very specific issue. Let's say you have low self-esteem, or you have strong active ego, or you have problems with girls or whatever. What you basically get is where do you get the information to help you overcome these things? Just having some more organized way of helping people to figure out how they can work on themselves and how they can overcome certain issues can really help a lot. And that's why I'm actually working also with people here with a more structured curriculum where people can just from point to point work on themselves to grow to the point where they are just much more stable as people. And you just really start from the bottom up. So going through that process has brought a lot of things up. And I think one of the most important thing, because we try to have some kind of, flow of events. And the most important thing is to get people interested in even getting into the information, to be interested in the information. And that, of course, depends from person to person. People that care a lot about money, you got to tell them you're going to make money out of it. People that want a girlfriend, you got to tell them you're going to learn how to get a girlfriend. Or people that are really into comfort and want to have fun, they have to be inspired. You basically have to connect with your audience first of all, even before you even come up with a really good course. And that includes also how to name course, because course is quite a boring term. So it has to sound a little bit cooler, maybe gamify it a little bit. So just market it really well. So the courses have to be marketed really well and really tap into people's, insecurities and anxieties and, fears and basically handicaps, and give them the idea that they can overcome it if they take the time to go over it. So that, I think that is the main thing. Even before any content, that is the main thing. How do you reach as many people as possible? A game is also a really good way of doing it. A game can really, reach a lot of people, definitely if it's a really, really good game. That's the first thing. The second thing, once you get people captivated and stuff, I do think putting them in a situation where they have the ability to use their brain is quite important. Because some people go through life in a very, very impulsive way. And as a result, they don't even have the mental capacities or attention span to even think about stuff. Even if it really concerns them, if it's not really very quick, very short term, they just, move on with their life. They go oh, it was nice inspirational videos, and forget about it. So putting them in a situation where they actually are more aware, and doing so, I think one of the best ways of doing that is working out, eating healthy, meditation, in that order. Even though eating healthy and meditation is way too far-fetched for most people that are really far gone, because it's if you don't care about your own health and stuff, okay, working out, you can get with it. It makes you look good in your body. It also releases hormones that makes you feel pumped and stuff. So that's really something, it's also socially very accepted. Eating healthy is already more boring. It's for more older people. It's eating healthy. I'm young. I live my life. But working out is something most people, a younger generation, can really relate to. So working out, I think, is quite a good stepping stone. And then from working out to eating healthy and then to meditating, in that order, can really more enhance your ability to absorb and process information. And then the first thing after that, because I'm just going through the chain of events I think people should go through if they really want to become a very more making sense human, is I think the first thing that should be on the table is the ability to be able to see your thoughts and emotions as an observer. So rather than going through life within your head, is to basically be able to look at it as an observer. And that's a talent or an ability or a skill that everybody has. That is, like getting a little bit over 14 to 15 years old, you start being able to look at yourself as an observer. Just as you look at other people, you can actually look at yourself. And doing so allows you to just look at your emotions and your thoughts. And then just the knowledge that you are not your emotions and your thoughts allow you to more easily overcome them and be able to understand where they come from. And I'm not going to go too much into it because I already talked a lot about it, but I'm just going to the process, being able to look at your thoughts and emotions as an objective observer. And you might say like that's contradictory because you cannot be objective observer. Your observer is always subjective, yes, but you can use reason and rationality and science and facts in order to look at it. And that requires something very important. And what that requires is it requires you to be a critical thinker. And critical thinking means you don't just look at your emotions and your thoughts and you just grab anything and you believe anything. You got to have a certain level of being able to think for yourself. And doing so requires you to look at all the information and make good conclusions based on them. But the problem is, just like math, learning how to work out certain equations and such, just as much as working out different informations and making connection is something you learn. You learn as you grow older. And critical thinking is literally something you can learn. Problem is, if you aren't so good at critical thinking, you almost have to, listen to other people and take what they say for granted in the meantime while you're growing. And in that regards, good news is you can just adopt what I'm saying. So if you really lack the ability to critical think, some people believe in God or in Jesus or whatever, you can just believe in what I say. Because it's about what do you give intellectual authority? Do you give intellectual authority to your family, to your friends, to your teachers, to your environment, whatever? You just want to give intellectual authority to what has the best chances of you growing. And that can sound a little bit like cultish or whatever. But the thing is, though, the beauty about taking me as an intellectual authority allows you to strengthen your critical thinking because that's what I'm telling you to do. It's good to have an authority that tells you to think for yourself because a lot of authorities are exactly doing the opposite. They're telling you not to think for yourself. So having an intellectual authority that tells you to think for yourself is already a really good start. Makes you allowed to trust the intellectual authority. And there it goes already. Like, trust is very important. Being able to trust me and what I say. And the way I build up trust is with my track record, my ability to really give a lot of very strong arguments. And also when sometimes people in the chat really disagree, talk to them and give them a platform so people get to see like, wait, this guy has really thought very much about these things. What is very important is the trust in that what I'm saying is quite well justified and has a very strong structure and is something you can fall back on. Of course, what is always important to know is that you got to think for yourself. But if you can't, you got to trust sources that help you grow. It's just like me. Like if someone comes to me, a PhD in quantum mechanics, and he says something about quantum mechanics, I'm not going to say like, I'm right, critical thinking, no, fuck that shit. No. I just take them as an authority. It's like, do you know the Earth goes around the sun? We just assume that's the case, right? I mean, we don't really think about it. We didn't calculate it out ourselves, but we just assume that it's true because we take what we have learned as an authority. And the thing is that being able to trust the right authorities can really allow you to grow a lot. And that's why sometimes when people link certain people in the chat saying like, oh, you got to check this guy, you got to check that guy. The reason why I'm sometimes quite reluctant in that regards to promote that is because when you take a wrong authority as your ability of creating your beliefs, it can really derail your growth like crazy. So thinking objectively and critical thinking, like when you look at your emotions and your thoughts and you don't identify with them, requires you to think objectively and think critically to be able to put it in context. And knowledge can really highly help you by understanding why you feel a certain way or why you think a certain way. Can highly help you to be able to differentiate and go like, okay, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my emotions, and these emotions come from there and these thoughts come from there. It allows you to release these emotions or disconnect certain beliefs with these emotions. But the problem is, if you don't know how to critically think, it helps to, give someone intellectual authority, like me, for example, and just build on that. But at the same time, critical thinking and thinking for yourself is crucial. But maybe at the start, if you're not as good at it, you can just use it as a bridge to when you more develop yourself. And a very big important thing about thinking critically, thinking objectively rational, is to stop thinking what other people think about you. I want to ask you guys a question. How many people here care what other people think about them? Just be honest. Because a lot of people find it very important what other people think about them. And I'm going to give you guys a little mindfuck here. For everybody that has typed yes in the chat, do you think as much as you think other people think about you, you think about them? And the reason why I'm saying this is because if you fully realize that just as much you don't give a shit about other people don't give a shit about you. And it's actually even a condition. It's called the spotlight effect. It's actually a bias. It's a cognitive bias. You start realizing, wait a minute, nobody actually gives a fucking damn about me because I don't give a shit about anyone else. It's because you're so self-centered that you actually make the wrong, you lack the awareness to understand that nobody gives a shit about you. And when you understand that nobody gives a shit about you, you stop giving a shit about people giving a shit about you because they ain't giving a shit about you. And it's a beautiful insight. You really gotta meditate on that. Because if you realize, but wait a minute, if nobody actually gives a shit about me, why am I actually giving a shit what they think about me? Because they don't give a shit about me because I don't give a shit about them. It's a very simple thought. And if you realize that, you can just stop caring what other people think about you. And as a result, you can think more freely. So when you think as an objective observer and you see you got the emotions, you the thoughts, it's very easy to get back swallowed by the thoughts by thinking, but what will he think about me? Or what will he think about me? What will my parents think about me? What will they think about me? They don't give a shit about you. Maybe your parents care about you. Your parents. That's it. Nobody else gives a shit about you. That's the real world. Your friends, your good friends, they don't give a shit about you. You might say no, I play League. Yeah, stop playing League and see how much they will give a shit. And that's the thing. When you grow older, you start realizing more and more as you grow older that nobody gives a shit about you. And that makes it easier for you to not care so much. And then validation seeking suddenly starts making very little sense. It's why would I care for the validation of others when they don't give a shit about me? Why would you have to go through all this bullshit of, wanting to be validated for who you are when people actually don't care? And I'm going to give you a big difference here about that one. And on the other hand, so you have this. And on top of that, about the validation seeking mentality, you might say yeah, but if people don't give a shit about me, why do I care about the validation that other people would give to me? Why would I care about that? That doesn't make any sense. Why would I care what other people think about me if they actually don't give a shit about me and I don't give a shit about them? Why does validation seeking even exist? And here's the beauty about it. Because I was also thinking about it. The problem with validation seeking is that it's a dysfunctional cognitive process. Because if you grow up, approval seeking becomes validation seeking. But approval seeking is a good thing. Approval seeking is you do something and you get approval from your environment so you know that what you're doing is actually good. It's very important for people to really think about this. It's normal to have approval seeking. That's how you learn. That's how you learn as a child. That's how you learn to grow. That's how you learn morals. That's how you learn skills. That's how you learn almost everything is through approval. But the problem is if you grow up and you become more intellectual, your more intellectual parts of the brain start evolving, then what happens is that approval seeking becomes more intellectual and gets channeled through your sense of identity. And that's where the dysfunctional cognitive process happens. The moment you're emotionally attached to identity because you grew up and your parents and your family and your friends and your school and society tells you this is who you are, that's it, you're good, you failed, this and that. You get this entire delusional idea of who you are. And then, if you don't have enough approval because you grew up and your parents were shit or whatever, or your friends were shit, you start channeling it through your identity. And that's when you start having validation-seeking behavior. Validation-seeking behavior arises from a lack of approval when you grew up that then gets made up by your identity and the need of wanting attention. And that is where you start realizing, wait, I have this identity. I want more validation. I want a validation about who I am, but nobody cares about who you are. And if you realize that, you can let go validation seeking. If you fully realize that, because it makes no sense. I wonder how many people realize this, because I explained it quite well. If you fully understand this mechanism, then you understand as a child you wanted approval so you can learn. And if you didn't get enough approval as you grew up, you lack self-esteem. And you want to make up, you want to compensate by creating a fake identity that you're not, because you're ever changing. You're compensating with a fake identity and you try to fill it up with validation of other people. Because that's what you learn through Facebook, through social media, through movies. You basically get conditioned to be a validation-seeking bitch. And the reality is nobody gives a shit. And if you realize that, you go but wait, I have this cognitive bias. I have this validation seeking, but I'm just a fucking retard. Nobody gives a shit about me because I don't give a shit about them. Why should I be a validation seeking bitch? It doesn't make any sense. And you can let go because you understand that it's about approval. And there's a big difference about approval, which helps you grow and learn skills and become, more compatible with reality, or being a freaking validation bitch. There's a big difference between the two. And that's the problem that I have with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that shit. It's because it's so tuned into this validation-seeking bullshit that channels the approval-seeking with achievements. Achievement here, achievement there, achievement. Like, you didn't evolve as a human being, billions of years of evolution, to get shitty achievements in game for opening a stupid chest. But yet, because it works, because it stimulates the reward center, it works, and that's why people can just do it. Just like a rat. If you stimulate the reward center, they can run onto a little wheel until they die. They don't even drink anymore or eat. They can just keep running until they die. And that's what the economy and the industry has become really good at, is stimulating that reward center with empty, useless shit. Same with your validation-seeking behavior. You get validation, your reward center gets stimulated, and you want more, and you want more, and you want more. But the real thing is, if you can stimulate it yourself, because you have a better self-view about yourself, then you don't need that shit anymore. You don't need the validation of others anymore, because you are stimulating the reward center yourself, because you understand what you are. And validation-seeking suddenly becomes irrelevant. It just becomes weird and derailed. And that is exactly why I have so much issues identifying with people that have validation-seeking mentality. And that's why I did research. I did fucking research. I said a month ago, when the sellout stream is over, I'm going to crack validation and self-esteem, and I did it. And I don't know how many people can hear that and go like, holy shit, what the fuck am I doing? Or how many people actually realize it? How many people make the connection when I say it so black and white, but that's how it works. Just explain to you guys how it works. I wonder how many people can get out of it. But if you're trapped inside your own head and you're really emotionally attached to your identity, it's really hard. I can say these things and you cannot make that connection. You cannot make that connection because you're too much inside your head. That's why looking at it as an observer is very important. So I wonder how many people actually understand what I'm just talking about this validation seeking, and how many people can actually overcome it by just hearing this and understanding it. I wonder. So we have to get validation out of ourselves. Basically, it's about stimulating the reward center. Let me tell you how it works on a neurological level. You have your self-knowledge. Is a part in your brain. They can actually pinpoint in your brain, there is your self-knowledge. And then you have your reward center. When you grow older and you're learning about what you are, and your parents are constantly criticizing you and pulling you down or whatever, then the idea of the self will not be able to be connected to your reward center. And that's when you have low self-esteem. So basically, in order to stimulate the reward center, you have to go through other ways. And if you are getting very much approval as you grow up, you start feeling good about yourself because the idea about the self is connected to your reward center. And that's when you think about yourself, you feel good. It's very simple. So low self-esteem and high self-esteem just merely is the extent to which you have a neural pathway that connects the idea about the self with the reward center. So now let's say you have high self-esteem, then obviously you don't need to stimulate the reward center from validation of others or from your environment or whatever. So you less need validation. You're just more yourself. But now let's say you have low self-esteem. You want to stimulate your reward center. So what do? You go through other channels. Maybe it's your girlfriend. Your girlfriend makes you feel good, stimulates the reward center, but your idea of the self is not that well connected to it, so you become very needy. You want your girl. Your happiness depends on your girl. But it's not your happiness that depends on your girl. It's your reward center that gets stimulated by your girl, and you become needy, and you become dependent. But the moment that the self, your self-knowledge, is connected to your reward center, you become more distant. You don't care so much about your girlfriend, whether she dumps you or not. Of course, it can affect you, but not as much. And that's why having higher self-esteem is crucial. I've seen that a lot of the issues of most of you guys, including people here, is low self-esteem. If you have high self-esteem, you're more confident, you're more trustful, you're more feeling good into your own body. All these positive aspects, you're less needy, you less are desperate, you're more positive outlook. There's so many good things because of self-esteem. And the thing is, if you have low self-esteem, basically you have all this array of all this bullshit that actually makes it so you have much harder time to fully grow and fully develop as a human being. And that is why I'm talking about these things, even on a neurological point of view, because as we grow up and as we develop, if these things when we were a kid are not very well stimulated, you're basically carrying around this drag because your parents were shit to you, or because for whatever reason, you're basically carrying it around for the rest of your life. And that's just stupid. And that's why I'm talking about these things. And being aware of these dynamics can allow you to overcome it. And I want to say something else. You know why people in the US, and maybe also a bit in Sweden, but more people in the US, do you know why they value money so much? Because I started to realize it. People's real self-esteem in the US is completely shit. I would go as far as saying that there is no so much self-esteem at all in the US. It almost doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is a fake identity. And the only thing they can trust when you have very or no self-esteem is money. Because money doesn't discriminate. I was reading the book, like the audiobook of the Sapiens thing. I don't know the full title. And they said like the reason why we've evolved to who we are now is for a big part because of money. Because money does not discriminate. You can trust it wherever. And that's the thing, like if you can't trust anything because you don't have any self-esteem, of course the only thing you can trust is money. And that's the problem. It's everyone for themselves. And you see that translates itself in the healthcare system and everything, even in debates and stuff. It's fascinating to see that. That's why certain people are so obsessed by money, because it's the only thing that gives them security, safety, and they can trust, because they cannot trust people. And that's why whenever I talk to Americans when they apply, they're fake as fuck. They're just trying to bullshit their way into here. Literally bullshit, and I just see through it immediately. Don't want to generalize, of course, but I'm just speaking overall, it's insane. I wonder how many Americans are watching this stream and go like, holy shit, this motherfucker has a point. So yeah, basically, like I saw someone say like it's self-esteem ego, and I will say what ego is. Basically, ego is the primitive part of the brain that is responsible for protecting you. So it's just like a lion. When there is some threat or whatever, it starts growling, right? It has a posture, and that's ego. Ego gets activated when you feel threatened, and that is either life-threatening situations or just when your beliefs get threatened. You just get activated. Your ego gets activated and literally takes away your ability to think rationally. And that had made a lot of sense back in the days. If you saw a lion or whatever, and you got to fucking run or whatever, or you got into like a heavy fight between life and death, just thinking about the situation will actually reduce your chances of survival. But nowadays, things have shifted. Like society has grown so fast. Neanderthalers, for example, millions of years just had stone tools. I'm just trying to say like the extent to which we have evolved, we've been evolving so fast from cultural to cultural revolution and changing our beliefs that our genes could not really fully adopt. And as a result, we're actually still having a lot of baggage because our genes could not develop fast enough. Normally, when you have like lions going to the top of the food chain, you have an entire ecosystem that can adopt and adapt slowly. But since we, with intelligence, the way we have been able to use thoughts and ideas in order to develop, we've been able to grow so much and advance so much faster that our biology is actually a little bit outdated in a sense. And that is why when you get into an argument and you have facts and you can still be in denial because we still have these remnants. But the good thing is we can overcome them through knowledge. We can overcome them by understanding how our brain works. And that is why I'm explaining these things, because you can overcome these things. So basically, ego is there to protect yourself and it gets activated. But the problem is, like, if you have a very low self-esteem and you distrust everyone, then basically it's constantly active. And the thing is, the way just like approval seeking as a child can result into validation seeking through identity from a more intellectual part of the brain, because you have more the primitive part of the brain, the limbic system, then you have the more advanced parts of the brain where you have the concept, imagination of identity. Imagination is actually one of the biggest breakthroughs of the cognitive revolution. We have gone through 3 revolutions: cognitive revolution, agricultural revolution, and scientific revolution. And the cognitive revolution is heavily built on our ability to imagine things. And back in the days, all the way back, like when you have a group of more than 150 people, things start deteriorating. But if you have the ability to imaginate stuff, you can put yourself under one banner, whether it's God or religion or a nation or a corporation or money. The ability to even value money is something that we can imagine. Our imagination was crucial in our development. And the same thing applies to identity. we are imagining that we are someone that we are not. And that's why a dog or a cat doesn't have an identity. But the problem is, like, even though identity might have been, helpful for us to get where we are, right now, the way we are living in a hyper-individualistic society where identity is central is actually going against our own growth. And that's why I'm pointing out how this dysfunctional belief is actually disabling you from growing as a person. But our ability to imagine stuff and connect value on our imagination has been crucial to our development. And that's why I say, like, you have this strong connection with the idea of who you are, your story, whatever, even though that's not what you are. You're just an ever-changing unit without center. Your neural activity right now has nothing to do with your past at all. Like, the story in your past has nothing to do with it. It's just like physically what you are, nothing more, nothing else. Everything else is just information. And our emotional attachment to identity, what it results to is, like, when the ego is active, it channels through it. Like, it can strengthen each other, but same with if you have low approval when you grew up, can also channel itself through identity, through validation seeking. So basically, an active ego can actually manifest itself hand in hand with strengthening your identity, and you can literally create a wall of, really thinking who you are and having this entire flow of action and thinking like, this is me. And this really allows you to connect the identity with your reward center. And that's really very dangerous. And that's even in psychology. There's even psychology, like if you've really low self-esteem, some psychologists say that it's good to have a strong identity so you can connect identity with your reward center and then let go your identity. But the problem with that is, like, if you get too much invested in your identity and it helps you to stimulate the reward center through your ego, active ego, you can sometimes lose yourself in it. And that's why I rather talk about things from a more detached perspective, although whatever works, Things work depending from person to person, things work differently, but I really like to give all the information, and I do believe that if people just meditate and put enough time, they can overcome these things of low self-esteem by just understanding that on a core level, them just working on it is enough. It makes them worthwhile, makes them even the best version of themselves. It's just them working on it and such. And a lot of it is just being able to look at your thoughts and emotion as an outsider and not identify with them. I keep saying that 100 times. Being able to look at yourself as an outsider is crucial for you to be able to overcome these things, and it really allows you to more easily also stimulate your reward center and such and create different pathways that are much more in line with reality. If you can really let go your identity and you can really look at yourself as an observer and you see your thoughts and the emotions and of course think objectively and critically, there's another thing. If you fully understand that, there is something you can do that I was always talking about, and I think more people will be able to connect with it. If you look at your thoughts and your emotions as an observer, not only be able to put them in context, but also you can switch it with someone else's thoughts and emotions. And the funny thing is, as an objective observer, you are essentially the same for everyone. Like, everybody's objective observer is the same essence, in a sense. It's just like, I'm not saying it's the same person. I'm just saying, like, you don't even identify as a person. You just look at it and you can realize, wait, I might as well be a person that is being tortured by ISIS right now. And if you do that, if you swap, you see your emotions and your thoughts and you swap it with some other person's emotions and thoughts that are a lot worse, you can come back and put these in context and feel a lot better about yourself. And that's why I always like to mention that what helps me a lot is comparing myself with people in Auschwitz, because you don't even have to do it with people that live today. You can do it with people that lived 50 years ago, or whatever. And I imagine if I was in Auschwitz, a clone of me would be in Auschwitz, right? I would immediately switch, even if I have to work 16 hours a day for the rest of my life. And that's the thing, like, if you have the ability to look at yourself as an observer and you not become your thoughts and emotions, but you're just an observer, you enable yourself to grow so much more and be so much more happy and feel good about yourself. And that is the thing, like, when people are aware of these things, they can really enhance their productivity, their proactivity, their sense of stability and happiness like crazy. Because where you are, how you live, has nothing to do with you. When you take identity out of the equation and you just start seeing things for what they are, you might as well be that person in Auschwitz. And that's why I also said, like the example with Hitler, if you look at yourself as an observer and you look at your thoughts and emotions, then you can much more easily imagine how Hitler has become who he is. Because you just see reality for what it is. You don't just go, no, this is impossible. You just start understanding reality for what it is. That is a skill set that really allows you to put things in context. Doesn't mean you're Hitler or something, but it just makes you see the world for what it is and makes you more easily be able to interact with it. And people that have very strong identity issues and are their thoughts and emotions all the time, they have no ability to put things in context, and they demonize and think in black and white all the time and in labels because they themselves live a labeled life. They think this is me. Identity is me, but it's not you. You're ever changing. And the moment you realize that and you can take distance, you can start looking at the world for what it is and you stop labeling. You start understanding. Because to me, when I read about Hitler and such, I wasn't just thinking like, this guy's a fucking monster. I was thinking, why did Hitler become Hitler? What happened? I wanted to understand it. I didn't just want to label it. And then I read like how the political background, the history. It actually taught me a lot. It teaches me a lot about what humans are capable of doing, rather than just wipe everything around one guy. Everything is one bad guy. That's bullshit. It was not just Hitler. It was not just the big bad wolf. It was much more than that. And by understanding it and not identifying and thinking in black and white, you allow yourself to see things more for what they are, and it gives you a better advantage in how to interact with people and such, and understand that people can really be quite fucking evil, but by understanding it, you can overcome it. I also want to say something about, like, for everybody here that's watching and says, what I really value is comfort. I'm going to tell you guys something, and this is something you guys are not going to like to listen to. Basically, the problem with people that really value comfort a lot, the problem with you is that you've been spoiled as fuck in your life. When you get spoiled, your brain tries to preserve energy, and it goes about it in a very stupid, simple way. Basically, if you can sit on your lazy ass and you can eat, you will sit on your lazy ass. It's only when you start being able to develop a bigger picture, or you get pushed in a situation where you have to overcome these things, that you're going to learn the mechanics as you grow older to be able to take shit into your own hands. The problem is, though, if you've been spoiled and pampered as you grew up, and you haven't really been challenged to get your own shit and your act together, then as a result, you grow up into this comfort bubble, and the only moment where this comfort bubble bursts is when you start having to pay your own fucking bills. And the problem with that is, like, most of the time when you get into that situation where you have to start taking care of yourself, you're not even fully prepared for it. And you can go about with a lot of identity crisis or whatever, but reality always finds its way to catch you up your anus, basically. You cannot override reality. And I've been thinking also a lot about comfort, because I know a lot of people have comfort, and also thought, like, how do I overcome comfort? The way of overcoming comfort is, I don't know how much insight can do. I don't know how much resonance can do to get you out of comfort. I think you just got to get a reality check. I feel like reality check is one of the best ways for people to get out of their comfort zone. And maybe you can put yourself in that situation. But most of the time, even though you would want to, you wouldn't have the emotional power to do so. People that are in a comfort bubble, it's also very much connected with wanting to fit in and want to live up to the approval of your parents, because these are the ones that keep you in this comfort bubble. But the thing is realizing that it's not going to last forever. It's more like a thought, and it's not so much like something you experience until you are actually in front of it. So yeah, in that regards, I would say that, yeah, if you're fully in a comfort bubble, being able to reflect on these things, I don't know to which extent they can help. Maybe people can give some good tips about that. But yeah, sometimes, it really requires you to get a reality check to get out of this comfort bubble, because that's something that a lot of people also experience. Why are we so flawed? You're not really so flawed. It's called the path of least resistance. If you don't have to use and spend energy, you don't spend energy. And that's why you stay in this comfort bubble. And you might say, like, yeah, but in the bigger run, in the future, like, it's actually worse. But you just came from being cavemen. And when you were a caveman, you didn't have to think about your future. It was all about the now, the now, the now, the now. We just live in a culture with technology and everything. We have just outgrown our conditions like crazy, and we haven't adapted to them yet. So yeah, about comfort, I also wanted to talk about it and just make you guys aware that when you are in this comfort bubble, it's just because your body wants to be following the path of least resistance in a primitive way. And most of the time, getting out of it requires you to get a reality check. I wonder if there is a way to get out of it without reality check. Maybe inspiration, but even inspiration, having a really inspirational video can maybe inspire you for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Like stuff that you really want, maybe a girlfriend or whatever, but it's kind of, it's kind of hard. I want to say something completely different though here, and I want to talk about dogmatic thinking. Basically, a dogma is, for example, God exists. Like, this is right, this is wrong. Absolutes, thinking absolutes. I've also talked about it in the book, and I'm repeating myself here, but it's very important. If you have any kind of dogma that you think like, this is right, this is that, I exist, whatever, any dogma. I bet a lot of people are watching the stream right now have certain dogmas. If you are someone that thinks in dogmas, you really stimulate yourself to stay in denial. It's always important to give yourself the probability that what you're thinking might not be fully accurate and not be emotionally attached to it. Because by doing so, you're just much more flexible for when you get information to be able to overcome it and replace your beliefs. Also, on top of that, it just helps you to be more open-minded and to not be as much in confirmation bias. But the problem is that thinking dogmatic is very much connected with low self-esteem, and is connected with distrust and with labeling and with ego and with identity. It's really like you really have this part of, fear. It's more like in the part of fear. On the other hand, when you go the other way around, where you have more, I would call it love, let's call it love, you're more open-minded, you think more into understanding situations, you're less labeling and judging, you just are much more positive. It's really the difference between the extent to which you are wanting to grow and really allow yourself to learn, or the extent to which you just don't want anything to get inside you. From a belief perspective, from a worldview perspective. And people that feel like protecting themselves because they are distrustful and such are more easily thinking dogmatic and shield themselves off. And it's funny that when you look at biology, even us as human beings, we have developed the ability, like our body, our cells are constantly killing viruses, and like same with the heart. When you put a heart, it has to, like the body doesn't have to reject it. So basically the body has to see it as one of themselves. They have to accept it, even on a biological level, on a cellular level. And it even happens on a psychological level, the extent to which you allow an idea to infiltrate your belief system, or to which extent you're just shielding it off. It's very similar to how you trust. Like, trust is very important. If you trust your source, if you trust the person you're talking to, you'd be much more open-minded to it. And that is why I also said from the start of the conversation, trusting me really allows you to more easily listen to what I have to say and really learn from it. And it's really fascinating to see how trust and distrust and low self-esteem and fear and anxiety is connected to certain people being overly skeptical in the chat and just thinking I'm, for example, a scammer, or I'm a cult leader, or whatever. Like, these things are not rationalizations, they're backwards rationalized afterwards, after the emotion kicks in of fear. When you see me as a threat, it's much more easy to just label me as a danger. And it's really fascinating to see that in the chat, to see these dynamics in the chat, where people, that don't have full insight basically project their own distrust into me, even though I'm quite well spoken, but also I base myself on science and facts.
Subscribe to youtube.com/AtheneWins. Watch the live stream at twitch.tv/AtheneLive and follow the real Athene on Snapchat.